We are so excited to have the national champs of what, 2 weeks now?
2 weeks, yeah. Sounds about right.
10
Um,
days.
3 years, I would say.
exactly. Back to back to back. Um, and we just want to talk to you ladies about a number of things, but one being the recap in Philly. But before we do that, there's a rumor going around that Macie, you are fueled by condiment, mustard, and a beer right before the final. Is that true?
That's half true. The beers have to come the night before the final, but that is a thing. And the mustard is about 30 minutes before. Yes. And poor Lynn didn't even know. She saw that post and she's like, Macie, what are you doing?
I was shocked. I was shocked. I was like, who does this? How can you do this?
I did.
Mustard of all things.
I did
It
see you
worked.
grab a beer though, Macie, and I was watching you, and it was literally minutes before, and you ended up giving it to a friend. But I was like, what is going on here?
I know I was trying to throw mind games on people. See if they thought how I did with a beer before. Just ready to be
Honestly,
out there.
I wouldn't be surprised if you drank a beer before a match. I think you would so be able to pull it off.
I think I might play better in all honesty.
I think
We
so
should
too.
we should try that. Well, because you guys remember the legendary Boston Open when Drew Broderick literally brought a beer out onto the final against Johan and Steven. He did. He brought it onto the final because he was like, "We're going to be here all day long. I might as well have a beer to enjoy it."
I love that.
I had no
He
idea.
needs
But
a
no,
keg.
I got a beer for a friend for our final. I haven't hit Drew status yet.
Next year.
Next year.
So, obviously this is the third title for you. Maybe you can just walk us through. Was it any different in terms of the challenge for you and mentally going into the tournament? How does it compare to winning it for the first time and getting over that hurdle? Can you talk about that a little bit?
I think he was
Uh,
asking you, Linjo.
okay, yeah. She's already been in that position before, so she doesn't feel what I'm feeling. But I think the first one was definitely the toughest one. And I think I was actually watching a replay of that match with Sven's dad, my father-in-law, a couple days ago, and it was just crazy to see like watching myself then and now, things that I'm doing differently and how much more comfortable I feel on court. And it
So
was
cool.
crazy to see me playing on the deuce side and Macie on the ad side. That feels like a lifetime ago. But I will say, in that match when we had some match points and some opportunities to close the match out, I think I got a little nervous. And then in our final last year against Ellie and Gabby, and in this year's final, I felt like I was in more of a trance. Like it's hard to explain because I only feel that I get that way when I'm playing in the finals, the national finals, where nothing else matters. Like I can't see, I can't hear anything that's going on outside of the cages. I'm just like in the now and so focused. So I think the second and the third were definitely easier than that first one for me.
That's
I
amazing.
I would agree with that. What's funny for me is I honestly felt like the it was the same one when Lynn and I won in Chicago was the toughest one for me because I felt I had gotten I was lucky enough to have a national with Marcelo Redezzo in 2020, but I felt like the one is great, obviously, but I feel like sometimes people can look at it as, oh, well, you won one, but the two really solidifies it. And I also really wanted to do it for Lynn. So I think that was the toughest one for me, which happened to be the same one as Lynn.
So I do have a quick story about the one in Chicago. That's right around the time that I started watching pro paddle, and I missed it live, and I was watching it around 11 o'clock at night, and my wife is screaming down, "Are you coming to bed or not?" And I said, "There's no way because this match is insane." It started raining or snowing, I think, in the second set, and I stayed up to watch the whole thing. And she's like, "You have a problem because you're watching paddle at 11:30 at night." But That was an incredible match. This year, you've had fairly, easy, not easy matches. Obviously, they're all competitive, but the closest set was against Morgan and Sakura, and you guys were down 5-3. And I watched, and you guys had a little bit of a chat before the ninth game. What were you guys talking about there?
I think you might even have a better idea than we do. I don't remember there being a chat by 4-5-3. Lynn, do you remember?
I really don't. That's interesting. We'll have to go back and watch that. But
I know.
I think the biggest thing in that match was that we had gone in with a game plan, and I think we weren't executing the game plan like we should have.
Agreed.
We were playing the wrong way. We were playing to Allison, and Allison was really hot that day. She played so well, she barely missed. And then she kind of started hurting us a little bit. And maybe at the 5-3 point, I think we were discussing that we needed to shift a little bit and play more to Charlotte on the deuce side. And I think that once we figured that out, we were good after that.
So, Lynn, I don't know if you told Macie or not, but I actually sent statistics of that match to Lynn that I had tracked. And you look at the first half of the match, and it clearly showed that Charlotte wasn't seeing any balls at all. And then if you look at the stats by the end of the match, it kind of had even out, right?
It had, yeah. But I don't know.
Are we putting you on the payroll as our statistics guy?
Sure.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
He's willing to do it unpaid.
It's what we call a glorified internship.
Yeah.
I'll take it. It's funny. A lot of the people I play with here ask me to do it, and I'll do it, and then they don't like the results, and then they stop talking to me when they see how many errors they have. But
oh no.
But I think it's just great information. It really kind of shows how the match can change over time, and personally for me, just where I'm taking too much risk and where my errors are coming from. So I'm kind of a stat geek in that way.
Yeah,
Love it.
I think this can relate to the club players as well, because a lot of the time you're playing in the same series, you're playing the same people over and over again in the leagues, and it's usually the same game plan, but you can go on court with a game plan. It's just the question is, are you going to be disciplined enough to stick to the game plan? And I think that's where Macie and I kind of see some of our struggles is we know what to do. Are we going to be disciplined enough to stick to it? Both of us during the whole match. So to the point where
easier said than done.
Like write it all down so you can see a visual, because we play the same people over and over again and we know what to do, but it's just like, it's in your head, but maybe if you see it on a piece of paper, like this is exactly what you need to do, maybe that would be helpful. I don't know.
Interesting. How about Philly in general? Just the whole tournament itself. Boston was my first tournament, and there were definitely some changes. Obviously, the schedule. I thought the attendance was good. I know that you played the final on the side court. I think it was due to sun. But can you talk a little bit about Philly versus Boston and what you liked and what you didn't like?
No, I mean, I think Philly did an amazing job. I had a great crowd, and I loved having the stadium court right there with all of the rest of the courts. Boston had an amazing stadium court set up last year, but with the limitations with the court being so far away from the other courts, you ended up splitting up the fan base a little bit. You ended up cutting it in half, versus Philly was able to put everyone right there. And I think that added to the atmosphere more. And for sure, we actually asked for them to consider putting us on the side court, because the sun was just going to be brutal at that time of day. For the men's final, they didn't have to worry about it because sun would already be down, but it wouldn't be a true showing of play, and it would just be such a battle with the sun. We played there before on the courts that face the same direction, and the sun is just brutal.
Makes sense.
Absolutely brutal.
Yeah, I think go for it.
Yeah, I mean, it ended up being it's kind of funny because it ended up randomly showing how intimate and cool it can be to have a main court be just with a couple three row bleachers on the side and having the tables and chairs in the back and having people standing, which don't even including myself, I never would have thought that would have been a cooler setup and cooler atmosphere for a final. I always would have thought big bleachers, but I think that ended up being a really cool showing of how intimate a setting that can be. I think everyone saw it on live stream. I mean, don't you, Lynn?
Yeah, I think that describes the sport perfectly, right? It's not like you're going to watch a football game or something where everyone needs to be up in the bleachers. I think people like standing around, people like having access to not, I always think about getting up on a bleacher and walking during a point, like when you're at a grand slam, it's kind of the same thing in paddle. You kind of have to wait for a good time to get up and go get your drink maybe. And I think this is a little more flexible. And like I think I was, like I said, in a trance. I didn't really notice how loud it was, but there was at one point I just kind of listened to the crowd a little bit, and it was like a huge roar, not even screaming. It was just all the chatter, and I was like, holy cow, it is loud as hell here right now. Like everyone just talking at the same time. But yeah, I think it was a really cool environment that they created on that side court, and I'm actually really happy that they let us play there instead.
Yeah. And to your point, Lynn, I mean, if with how these points are going in paddle, you don't want to wait like 2.5 minutes to go.
Mhm.
Like you want to get up and you're like, oh well, this might be a while for you to go up and to get up and move. So I
Exactly.
think it's good to have that kind of setup.
Definitely. I think too with like tennis tournaments, I know at like the US Open, sometimes the best, matches you see are on the side courts and you're right on the fence and get to see how good the players are actually in person. So it's definitely special being that intimate, and being able to see from that close.
Yeah, I will say there was like, I think there was 1 point or 2 points. I felt a little self-conscious. Not really. I just felt like I was all up in someone's space because when I was returning Teo's serve on the ad side, I was like up against the screen and there was a lady. I don't know who it was. I should have looked at her, but I was just trying to stay focused. She was sitting right there and I was there and like my butt was right against the screen. And I'm like, this is kind of weird because I'm all up in her space. She's a spectator.
She
I'm
liked it.
trying to play, but like I'm getting ready for my return and I'm right there. And I felt a little awkward at some point, but I thought that's kind of cool. It's like really intimate to have the spectator so close to you.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I got to sit up front close for Durant Mitchell against McNerney Morgan, and just being that close, the athleticism and the speed at which they play was just it was numbing for me. So I agree that it was a totally different feel. Along the lines of mentioning, it seems like the both the men and the ladies are a little bit top heavy in terms of the same teams playing against each other. I'm not asking to name names, but are there rivalries developing? I mean, it seems like everyone in the paddle community is so friendly with each other, but you are playing, a lot of the same matches in the semis or the finals against the same teams. Are there rivalries developing, or can you touch upon that?
I mean, I guess
Uh,
it's what you constitute as a rivalry. I mean, obviously there's like I guess you could equate it to how Federer and Nadal had a rivalry with with air quotes per se because they played each other all the time. But we are in such a tight knit community, and we're all teaching pros. We all help each other out. So I mean, it's not anything off court that's a rivalry. Everything is on the court.
Yep.
do
Macie, I
we
know.
think there are any, sorry, I'm gonna cut you off. Do we think there are any rivalries? I don't want to say rivalry because of what Macie just said, but like we get what you're saying with those matchups where you're always like, who's gonna win
Mm-hmm.
it this time? I'm just wondering on the men's side if you think there are any of those because he's right. There's like four top teams, I think, in both. So I don't know. One that I've seen this season where you're not sure is kind of Jose and Alvi versus Mark and Gia.
Yeah.
I think I think I would say that that's a good rivalry.
Yeah, their
I
semifinal
love the
match.
air. I love the air quotes on the rivalry.
I like what Macie said though about the Federer and Nadal, right? Because it is,
Yeah.
they are the biggest rivals, but they have an
Yeah.
immense respect for each other and are, very friendly, and you
Yeah.
can see that with how they play each other. So I like that. But yeah, the semifinal between Guillermo and Guillermo versus Regalado was they had a big lead in the second set and then kind of lost that lead, but was a great match, and they've gone either way. So I think that's the best part of the rivalries, right? Where, like you said, it can go either way, and there's no one's dominating it, and anything can happen out there.
Yeah.
Do you guys did they play any other time during the regular season? Obviously, we know they were last year's final match, this year's semifinal. Did they play any other time?
They didn't play in Short Hills. They were on opposite sides of the semis. I'm not sure. Sean, do you know if they had
No,
played?
I don't think they did.
Yeah.
Well, the other one that comes to mind on the men's side, and again, rivalries, but Tyler and Adam split up, and they ended up playing each other twice that I know of in the season, and each team won once. But
Good point.
I think I saw Tyler and Adam talking for a lengthy period of time. I don't know their personal relationship, but it certainly seems like they're still friends. But that's an interesting situation where the partnership moved on, and now they're going to be playing each other probably on a regular basis, right, with new partners. But
I think we forget that's very healthy. And I think because the sport is so small, it sometimes seems like, oh, like it's a breakup. But when you think about it in tennis, how people change partners all the time, doubles partners all the time. I think that's important. If something's not working, then it's back to the drawing board. But I think that's completely healthy, and it's nice to see that they've moved on with partners and they're very cordial around each other at tournaments.
Yeah,
and they
especially for those two. I mean, Tyler partnered up with Eric West. They're both out of Cincinnati. They can practice together all the time. And then, Morgan McNerney can practice together all the time. And obviously it worked out for them pretty well. So I think, just like Lynn said, it's a small sport, but if something's not working, there's no, there should be no harm or foul to giving the game a different look.
Yeah. And obviously, Macie, you won in 2020. Could you maybe speak to how you two connected and started playing together? Maybe who reached out to who, or, how that came to be.
Yeah, so we were I was playing with Marcela Rodesno, and then she ended up she got the year after we won, she got pregnant with her third. And then so she ended up kind of we even played nationals that year. She was 5 months pregnant. And I was like, Marcela, you don't have to play. She's like, oh no, I'm fine. She taught when she was like 38 weeks pregnant. But anyway, that's another story.
In place.
Exactly. But then the next year, she couldn't play quite as much, and we were talking like, oh, well, we shouldn't play everything together. We should split up a little. And then lucky enough, Lynn was playing with Lisa at the time, and Lisa also happened to be pregnant, and so she was going to kind of taper off her competition. And so I was like, so Lynn, are you playing with Lisa still, or is she not? and then she's like, then I think Lynn came back. She's like, oh, Lisa's not playing this tournament. You want to play? Played Long Island first, right, Lynn?
Yes, that was our first one. I'll never forget, because I think I had asked Sven, I was like, who do I play? Was it Long Island, Detroit? I don't have a partner. It was right after Charities, I think, somewhere around that time. And then he was like, text Macie, because the text she had sent me was a little it wasn't black and white. There was some gray area to I was very, very scared of rejection. I'm very scared of rejection in general. So I was like, I don't want to ask her and then she's going to tell me no. And, she's a national champion. Who am I? And then I texted her. She was like, yep. And I was like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. Why was it so hard for me to do that? But yeah, it worked out.
Definitely has worked out. And kind of piggybacking off what Sean said, about the top heaviness of the draws. Like, for instance, at nationals, all 16 of the seeded men's teams made it to that, round of 16. And then in the women's, all of the top 8 seeds made it to the quarters. So I don't know if there's necessarily, a concrete reason for this, but it seems like, upsets of the seeded teams are becoming harder and harder. And, Is that maybe due to just, the level that you guys have taken it to at the top of the game, or how do you think that is? Because I'm sure you don't really have scouting reports on all these teams that you're playing or know their tendencies, but it seems like you guys haven't had much trouble in the early rounds with, kind of some somewhat unknown teams.
I think it's a little bit of I think has a lot to do with confidence.
Yeah,
And it's not so much like the seeding, it's more just maybe knowing your level and what your strengths are when you compare them to your opponents. So I think you do walk into a lot of matches with a little bit of a chip on your shoulder, kind of expecting to win, setting a high expectation for yourselves. But Macie and I always like to work on a lot of things in those early rounds,
yeah.
just so we get better from it and that we're ready for the later rounds where it does get a little bit tougher. Because if you kind of jack around in those first couple rounds, then you'll be in trouble for when it actually counts.
Definitely. And yeah, no, that's great.
One of the things I want to talk about was speed of play. I know, Macie, you've talked about it a lot on your podcast. And so, as I think some of the club players may have a hard time understanding what that means to somebody like you and Lynn. Both of you have tremendous offensive shots and overheads. What does slow play mean to you? Because watching you guys play, let's say Allison and Charlotte, it may be hard for a club player to really determine what does slow play mean in a match like that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. Yeah.
There's obviously we if you watch Drew Broderick, you can tell that he's out there to wait as long as humanly possible till a mistake's made, right? And it's not that he doesn't take offensive shots, but is it a lob to drive ratio? Like how would you explain to a club player the difference between a pro that's playing fast and a pro team that's maybe playing a little bit slower?
I think that was definitely for you, Lynn. I think he definitely wanted you to answer that one.
For me, I keep it simple. I think playing slower is just like you said with Drew, staying in the points a little bit longer, really locking in, lobbing more, being very, very selective about when you do decide to create offense and transition in, and then playing fast. I think a good example is B and T. They play very quick. They like to drive a lot. They like to transition a lot. But I think if you watch Macie and I, it's not so clear cut. I think we're a mix of both a little bit. And I think really adapt to who we're playing. So I think in some matches we play a little bit slower, but in other matches we do play a little quicker, whether it's one or both of us doing that. So I think it's nice to have some diversity and be able to do a little bit of both.
Yeah, agreed. And I think, do you guys find that, playing your style versus kind of playing the opponents, right? Like, do you, in most matches, you want to, enforce the things that make you great, whether, driving, volleying, overheads, rollers, but then there's also a certain aspect of, we want to put this opponent in that situation. So how do you kind of find that balance between doing what makes you guys great players, but also, picking, the spots that you want your opponent to attack your opponents on, and kind of tailoring the way you're playing to challenge their flaws and things like that?
I mean, I could say I think that's something we're still working on. I think that's super. That balance is what you ideally want to find, and I think it's really not easy at all. And I would definitely say that's something that we continuously work on trying to get better and better at.
On the slow play front, obviously the men's final went 6 hours, and that does create a challenge, from a watchability standpoint, right? I don't know. I there was a comment. Somebody mentioned Graham is very involved on Reddit, and somebody had a snarky comment that basically said Graham and Regalas are ruining the sport, and because of the slow play. I thought Graham had a great answer. He said, I can assure you that was the last thing on my mind when I was playing in the final about how, making it watchable. And then he said, even though I don't even disagree with the premise of what you're saying, which is, a 6-hour match is not the most fun to watch. So
I just want to backstep to something. You're telling me there's a paddle Reddit page?
yes.
Is that really?
Oh yeah.
Tennis.
Lynn, are you
I
active
also
on
heard that Graham is very active on that page
Are
too.
you active? There's a paddle Reddit page?
Oh
Okay.
yeah.
Wait, I know someone else who's on that page. Wait, who was telling us? Mark Powers is apparently
Powers? Oh,
yeah, I
no,
remember
you're right.
Yep, he was actually the one telling us about it. So
That's great. On that Reddit page, people like ask Graham questions and he'll chime in, and so it's pretty funny to see.
amazing. You have to
That
share
is
the page with us.
hysterical.
Yeah.
Oh, and
Oh my.
there's even somebody, Graham it seems to be very technical. And someone was even asking about ball changes and spin, and he was drilling down to, Adam and I, whenever we change a ball, we notice that a lot of the drives out of the gate will end up into the net because the ball isn't soft or warm enough. And we always remind each other on a ball change to be careful, cognizant of that, and maybe wait a little bit until we start to drive. So it's like hardcore paddle talk.
I'm sure you two have already
heads during matches.
What's that, Lynn?
This is what is going through people's heads during matches.
Yeah.
Oh my God. This makes me think of like those old school advice columns, but it's like in the we now have technology. It's like, oh, ask Graham. Paddle, ask Graham.
Ask Jeeves.
Oh my
I was
gosh.
definitely not thinking about the ball. I was thinking about what pose I was gonna do with the trophy.
So
who I was gonna run to first, who I was gonna hug first.
Love
where
it.
are you going to go out that night? But
100%.
Exactly.
We talked about it somewhat last pod, but just regarding the 6-hour match and kind of speeding things up, I think really the only logical option I would see is maybe going to no deuce scoring, right? Once you get to a deuce, to just speed it up because that doesn't really affect the actual gameplay. Are there any things that you guys have thought of or think might be conducive to speeding up matches but also not losing the integrity of this the sport?
I want to touch on the no ad because I used to think it's a great idea, but I was having a conversation with someone the other day saying, like when I was playing college tennis, my freshman year was regular ad scoring. My sophomore year, they wanted to shorten up the format just for like streaming on TV, and it really made a difference. It's like I think that could be good and bad for the sport, where you start having people lose to people they shouldn't really lose to because they've lost a couple of deuce points.
Yeah.
Right. So, yeah, I don't know what the answer is, but I think there are pros and cons to shortening up the format.
Yeah, it can definitely be a little bit flukier, for teams to
Yeah.
win a few games there. So that's a good point.
Yeah.
A male player who will not be named, it's not Tomas. He said that he said that you should. It's not Tomas. I can probably. There's another one. Said that you should do a shot clock where if you're at the net, you get 20 seconds to end the point, or you have to give up the net and like force transition.
That was on your podcast, Macie.
No, it wasn't.
Was it?
No shot.
Well, Sean is the CEO and founder of Cutter's Rules, so he might be funding that.
But like if you have a shot clock, and then if you don't do it, it's like in basketball. If you don't get the shot, then you have to give it up. But logically, I have no idea. And I also think that, we like what your point, Lynn, with college tennis, they did that to increase the what chances of it being on TV. And that did that happen?
I don't think it really, and look, it didn't apply to everyone too, right? If you were in a big conference, maybe you were getting streamed, but it didn't apply to everyone. But I do think I like that clinch format that they did. I don't know how you can apply that to paddle, but I did also hear about Noah from Xenon working on a new ball.
I I think that's a good point.
Mhm. So
Because
maybe that.
apparently the balls are bouncier than they used to be 20 years ago. And I heard that allegedly that they're bouncier and that's what's allowing a lot more transition.
Mhm.
I don't know.
Very interesting. I mean, that definitely makes sense, and it would obviously be a big change, but not unheard of, right? Golf's rolling back the ball right now, and other sports have done it, so that'd be very interesting.
Mhm.
Well, we don't want to take up too much of your time. Just a couple more topics. One is, are you ladies playing padel yet at all?
Lynn Joe.
Yes, obsessed, really obsessed. So much, so much, so much fun. So I told Macie I wanted to play some padel tournaments this summer, and she said no, that she was going to do her pickleball adventure. So if anyone's looking for a padel partner, let me know. But actually, I did tell Charlotte Zakora and I were saying we might play a few together. So
Oh, you should. That was so fun.
yeah,
I
so
love Charlotte.
it's a hot sport right now. Everyone, I mean, and where I'm from in South Africa, everyone's playing it. And, South Africa is a country that doesn't have a ton of money. So I feel like for it to be able to grow there, whereas they tried to make a push for pickleball and no one liked it. All the tennis players hated it. So then padel came around and now everyone's obsessed with it. So I think it's a great sport. It's coming from platform to padel. You're able to hit the walls much easier as opposed to someone who hasn't played platform, which is cool. And I also think it's a really good workout, which, we're always looking to get a workout in
Yeah, I've heard it's much more cardio intensive than platform.
a lot more. Yeah.
Do you see it as
Uh,
a threat to the let's just say the growth of platform tennis? No, Macie?
I personally don't. I think paddle will always be saved with the fact that it's the winter sport. There's nothing quite like it playing outdoors in the winter. And I think I don't even see it in the same capacity, but I could be wrong.
Um, so wrapping this up, who is your favorite player to watch, not named Tomas or Sven?
Well, I got in trouble for this last time. I'm only saying Sven. No one else ever again. Because my prediction was someone else for nationals. So I Sven all the way.
Um, this is a very good question, and I haven't thought about it. So I would have to say I'm probably going to go with Eric West. Definitely probably one of my favorites to watch. With the amount that he drives and the way he plays and loads up and creates offense. Guille Nunez, another one, mate with amazing hand, crazy offense, always trying to dink and blitz some way, shape, or form. But yeah, I watch the team of Powers Nunez a lot, and so there, that's my answer.
Love
Yeah,
it.
my answer outside of Sven is Mark Powers, and it's always been Mark Powers. I don't know why, but I
It
think
will always be Mark Powers.
it'll always be Mark Powers. It's just something, and I've told him this before too. It's his demeanor, everything about the way he carries himself on court. He always looks so mentally dialed in. He looks scary at times, but I love it. And he has the most amazing forehand I think I've ever seen. And sometimes when I'm playing, I just try to channel him with that forehand, but his forehand is really badass. So I enjoy watching him play.
He's a great guy. So the club that I belong to is the oldest grass tennis club in the U.S. And they have every 2 years they do Yale and Harvard versus Cambridge and Oxford.
Oh,
And,
he's told me about this.
and
Yeah.
Mark played in it, and he actually came down a couple of years ago to watch it. So he's a fan of the tournament, but he's such a super nice guy.
Davison or Seabright?
Seabright.
Seabright. Okay, got it.
So we have three clubs within a mile and a half of here: Navasink, Seabright, and then Rumson. Rumson's
All right.
club, from a paddle perspective, is smaller than the other two because it's mainly a golf course. But that's it. Seabright. Have you
The
played
Seabright is Maria Manley.
Marie? I played with
Oh,
Maria this
yeah.
weekend. Yep.
Brittany Ladeau.
Brittany.
Shout
Yep.
out to Brittany.
She's great.
That's awesome.
She's getting back into paddle. She just had a baby, and now she's playing a lot with Maria. So
I saw them at the New Jersey State tournament, so it was nice seeing her back in action.
and Sarah Harron won the A flight. She's at Navesink and Seabright too.
True. Wow. Amazing.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. This has been truly a pleasure for us, and I hope that we can get you back on at a future date after maybe your 4th title.
Sounds like a date.
Sounds like a deal. Thanks for having us.
Thank
you so much.
Yeah, thank you guys. This was great. Really appreciate it.
All right.
Cheers.
Bye.
Bye.